Epic of Dreams. What does man truly fear? Death itself, or relinquishing his existence on someone else's terms? What if this true fear had a face? What if this fear took men and turned them into the beasts from which they fled? Sup, nerds? I am Drew Cochran, and you'll notice that this week I don't actually have any associates with me. Heracles, son of Zeus, and Eroxenes the dragon are in timeout this week. Why, you ask? Today on Mythic Monster Ecology, we will be discussing the man-eating beast itself, the Manticore. We will discuss its origin myth, dissect its archetypal traits. We will reveal an account of a true Manticore that actually existed inside of history that cannot be refuted. And we will also talk about Manticore Combat Tactics. Alright, origin myth, Marvel Cinematic Universe entry, the Manticore. Are you ready for this? Thanks, Grandma. The Manticore is featured a lot inside of European mythology and Persian/Arabian mythology. The thing about Manticores is that they came from India, supposedly. But the first time that they were written about was inside of Persian courts relaying news from the grand mystical land of India to the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire was a very multicultural, diverse hub of modern societal values that actually took place wicked way back at the turn of the millennium, right? The other cool thing about this story is that it came from India, right? Indian claims. It was inside of the Persian courts, but it was written down by a Greek boy. Greek man. B-O-I. That's how I'm spelling boy here. You understand. His name is Ctesias. The book is called Indica. I may be pronouncing Indica wrong, but I know I'm pronouncing Ctesias right. This is from, 4th century B.C. The Martikhora is an animal found in this country, India. It has a face like a man's, a skin red as cinnabar, and is as large as a lion. It has 3 rows of teeth, ears, and light blue eyes like those of a man. Its tail is like that of a land scorpion, containing a sting more than a cubit long at the end. It has other stings on each side of its tail, and one at the top of its head, like the scorpion, with which it inflicts a wound that is always fatal. If it is attacked from a distance, it sets up in its tail in front and discharges its stings, as if from a bow. If attacked from behind, it straightens it out and launches its stings in a direct line to the distance of 100 feet. The wound inflicted is fatal to all animals except the elephant. The stings are about 1 foot long and about as thick as a small rush. The Martikhora, the Persian word for man-eater, is called in Greek Anthropophagos, man-eater, because although it preys upon other animals, it kills and devours a greater number of human beings. It fights with both its claws and stings, which, according to Ctesias, grow again after they have been discharged. There is a great number of these animals in India, which are hunted and killed with spears or arrows by natives mounted on elephants. A lot of things to take in there. This is a very poisonous creature. In many of the modern depictions of a manticore, they have, dragon wings for some reason, which is found nowhere, even in the European proliferation of the myth of the manticore. But what is not seen in any of the modern depictions that I have seen are crests of these stings that are on the manticore's head like horns, which Ctesias definitely relays here through the Indian accounts. Another thing to take note of this, I've seen I've seen other accounts from European pens, if we want to call, the Greeks Europeans, claiming that there are so many of these beasts, be it dragons or snakes or manticores in this case, that they're all over the place in India. So I don't know if that is a piece of hyperbole, but I do know that this was written for Persian officials, if I understand that correctly. So perhaps the hyperbole isn't as inflated as one might think. Anyways, no wings, but they got more spines than probably is depicted in the 5th edition Monster Manual. In utilizing the modes of my modern brain, I will say that I do not believe the manticores ever existed in truth, biologically speaking. But I do think that this myth probably stemmed from the Indian tiger itself. However, there are probably some megafauna that existed during, the prehistorical ages of prehistoric man that they probably tussled with. It's not outside of the realm of possibility for mammals to have poisonous traits. We have, the platypus and some other things that I'm probably not thinking of. The echidna. I mean, the cultural memory in the Indian mind, from what I understand, which is limited, is that tigers were the prime fear to the Indian society. That if you went out in the dark, or if you went out into the wilds, the tigers would find you and eat you. And tigers would also come into villages and aggressively attack them. The memory from which the myth is culminated and stews from, right? It says in the account of Ctesias that the manticores have red skin, which is very much what the tigers do, the cinnabar fur. Alternatively, the Indians may have come into contact with spiritual beings who threw their ordered consciousness away and instead traded them for rabid indulgence and bitterness. Manticores definitely don't have wings. This was either some kind of bastardization due to heraldic imagery, when they have like the shields and the amels and the stuff, like the wheat and like all of the Catan cards just on a shield with some flowers. That's your family, right? So they probably had it as an invention inside of this portion of history, or it could have been inside of the modern trope of the manticore, a bastardization of Renaissance Christian art where they portray cherubim as lions with wings. So what do we say of the manticore itself? It is a predator, it is a beast, it strikes fear in the hearts of men. Such is the fear that is evoked by the manticore and its tail, that man believes that the manticore's driving purpose is to taste and tear human flesh. If we were to dissect the myth of the manticore further, we'll find that poison is a pervasive theme. And if we take the archetype of poison and what it represents inside of a mythological context, usually this speaks to antisocial behavior, being a betrayer, being deceitful. These are all things that poison is associated with inside of the language of mythology. If we are to dissect the manticore even further, many depictions of the manticore, especially in the European iterations of the creature, have a mane on them. It is a lion with a man's face instead of a tiger, because the Europeans know lions more than tigers. And when we pair both the Indians' memory of the tiger with the regal air of the lion that was understood by the Europeans, and the element of poison, and the face of a man, we come upon the true myth of the manticore. The manticore has the spirit of a tyrant who has given all of his wisdom away in exchange for his baser desires. He has become, instead of just and wise, cruel and irrational, angry and out for blood. Due to this Manticore Energy, we have one factual account, at least one, I'm sure there's more, but this is the one that spoke out to me, of a true manticore in existence. Behold, Nero the Great! Alright, where to start with this guy? So many things were written about Nero the Great that it's hard to bring it all in. But we're going to focus on a couple things from his core myth, we'll call it, because some of the claims that we have here are written by political voices who were against him and what his policies were, this, that, and the other, while he reigned as a king. However, his history is pretty freaking dark, and one could easily see that this man, both in form, function, and appearance, was indeed a true manticore, a rabid king of beasts. Nero the Great. When he was a kid, he basically did whatever he wanted. He was a liar. He was violent. He was learned. He learned a bunch of stuff. But then he also killed, like, all of his mentors and teachers. Another thing that happened was that he killed his mother. Matricide. Matricide. I don't think tigers even do that. He burned Rome for himself. A lot of people claim that Nero burned Rome for a bunch of different reasons, or that it didn't actually happen, or that he didn't actually sing while he was burning Rome to the ground, and then he blamed the Christians, and he did all that, fascist tactics or whatever. But the reason why Nero wanted to destroy Rome was so that he could literally build a city named after himself on top of it that was made of gold. The man was megalomaniac, bigger than Napoleon. For the purpose of his rabid desire, he threw away literally his capital city. The job of a king is to look after their people. It's very much a shepherd and sheep dynamic. He bled all of his sheep dry so that he could taste of their flesh all at once. The Bible proclaims Nero as the beast. He is the beast of Revelation. He is also the true and archetypal Antichrist. So every attribute that you would put upon the biblical Christ, you would flip it around, and it would be true of Nero. He traded away the kingly values that were required to be a great man, to build up his nation, to secure for himself in history something that was valuable. And he traded it all away, threw it all away, so that he could chase his crazy dreams at the expense of the lives and livelihoods and safety of everyone that he knew. And while the bastardization of the European form of the Manticore, which was originally a tiger, turned into a lion, Nero embodies both of these halves at once. The last thing about Nero is that he was a deviant sumbitch. Amongst many of his sexual escapades, he did some very crazy things inside of the American understanding of sexuality and the Greek side of sexuality, right? But the one thing that really set him apart was that after he married a young boy that he castrated because he claimed that he looked like his previous wife that he killed, once they, begot their marriage and had their stuff, they would do this practice of dressing up in the skins of animals, essentially crucifying people, maybe not with the nails and everything, but they would tie them up to posts, and then they would, both of them, run up with these animal skins and literally rip people's genitals apart, mutilating these people for their pseudo-sexual fun. Very messed up. A part of that makes me think that maybe some theme of him dressing up in those clothes of an animal, he probably dressed in the robes of a lion, right? And if he did so, this is a callback to our very own co-host, Heracles, son of Zeus, which has a lot of other connotations, because if Nero was dressing up in the clothing of a lion, he might either be trying to just be the beast, as it is claimed of him by the Bible and all of his political opponents. Here's some quotes. One person said that he mentioned him as that noxious wild beast. Another said, his soul should be given to a beast when he reincarnates. So he may have just been playing the role of a predatorial animal, because this was what was inside of his soul. You roleplay, especially the first few characters that you roleplay, that which you wish you become. And this is what Nero wanted to be, for this is what Nero was, a living manticore. However, if you wanted to play instead the role of Heracles, his icon was wearing the lion head and the skin. And he was likewise a very heroic figure. We know that inside of like the Disney films and the modern depictions of him, we just kind of apply the hero's tale to him and sort of gloss over all the details. But inside of the actual mythology of Heracles, son of Zeus, he was a pretty dark guy. And we'll get into that in another video, and we'll talk about that there. It would make sense that Nero would want to dress up as Heracles, because Heracles was an archetype of masculine power, but he was also a savage in his darker moments. To surmise the Manticore Energy. All right. So, you take 1 part lion, and all of the regal allure and power that comes upon it, with it. The Manticore has this indwelt power and sort of this seed of having a societal role as something to keep the peace. In addition to this, there's the tiger energy. This beast that is a ferocious predator that is very aggressive in how it hunts and stalks. Such to the point that it evokes fear inside of the general populace of the humans that live there to no end, such that its own memory is hyperbolically twisted into a beast of venom that is the Manticore. The third element is the venom itself. Such is the antisocial nature of the Manticore that it is a solitary predator. It is a beast that seeks blood above all things to sate its own hunger at the expense of anything that may be seen or treated as friendship. The poison denotes corruption. The regal and empyrean figure of the lion that it could reach and live up to is instead twisted upside down. And it trades all of the traits of a good ruler instead of a tyrant, because it has this power and it chooses to enact it upon lesser beings for the sole purpose of feeding itself and its own pleasure. Nobility to savagery. The Manticore is also emboldened by this desire. The reason why there is the meme of the Manticore being fast. You are surprised and killed by a Manticore. It quickly shreds your flesh and devours you. This is a meme because it's true. There's always truth in the meme. For the sake of its gluttony, for the sake of its bloodthirst, so is the Manticore given the power of speed. It is nimble. It is hasty. Likewise, the reason why the Manticore has a human face is because there is the element of humanity inside of him. There was once the potential, and we go back to the lion energy, that is perhaps 1/2 of the base, the foundation of the Manticore. There was potential for greatness. There was potential for good things to come about of this predator's existence. But instead, it has been sacrificed for desire. And this is the fear that transforms men into beasts. This is the fear that turns good men into Nero the Beast. And that fear is succumbing to the burden of rule such that your own desires, the dreams of your youth, would be lost under the weight of the responsibility of the crown and the will of the people. The death of not of yourself, but rather the death of your own will. Following that fear to the egregious ends of sacrificing all other things for the sake of your own desire. This is the Manticore energy. And if you play Manticores that are sentient at your table, take these elements and remember them well, and they will do well to inform these characters as you bring them. Perhaps you are playing a Manticore character that wants to strive for good things, but has so many layers of indwelt history just because of the beast that it is, that this kernel of humanity is stuck inside of the sea that is churning, and the current sweeps it up. Another good example of a Manticore king would be Nebuchadnezzar. Inside of the Old Testament, Nebuchadnezzar defies God in his pride, and God curses him and makes him insane and causes him to essentially act like a cow. He loses all rationality. He essentially becomes a demoniac, and he is crazy and insane. So, all of that to say that inside of the Manticore NPC characters that you might want to bring about, other than just an adversary, you could portray that humanity not as perhaps a modernized tiefling good guy vampire archetype, but rather that they have moments of humanity that get thrown about and tossed inside of this crazy, irrational, predatorial desire. You got me? All right, next up, Manticore Tactics. If we look at the account of Ctesias from the Indians to the Persians, written down by the Greek, we find that the Manticore relies on its stingers when threatened. However, otherwise, its modus operandi is the same as the tiger. It approaches as it desires. Its desire is unyieldy, so it will be aggressive in stalking and prowling and entering into even huddled human communities. So the Manticore will, without fear, walk and prowl and try to find the sickly one among the herd that it might quickly go, slay, devour, and shred the flesh of. And they desire the blood of men. This is the blasphemy that is the Manticore. They do rely on speed, and their speed and alacrity is indeed given to them by the power of their indulgence and gluttony. The reason why they are so ferocious is because their desire is so great. The Manticore energy differs from the dragon energy, which we covered way back, in that it must keep moving. It is almost like a shark. Perhaps for this reason, it is why the Manticore was attributed 3 rows of teeth, because the shark must hunt in order to survive. The same is true with the Manticore. Its bloodlust is lust for blood. It does not have the patience of the god reptile. Inside of combat, when it does come up against a force that truly threatens it, then it will apply these poisonous measures with the spines. It only has so many of them. So like if you're playing 5th edition, it'll say the Manticore should like have a recharge or something. But honestly, they did Manticores dirty in 5th edition, because CR3, get out of here with CR3. What are you... Anyways, if I ran a Manticore in 5th edition, I would make it so that its poison darts are very lethal. It wouldn't be a one-hit KO like Ctesias is talking about, because we're dealing with, you know, sort of superpower Marvel-esque heroes in 5th edition. But they would be very deadly. They would still hurt very much. Like, it wouldn't be a one-hit KO, but if 2 of them got you, you'd be down and out. You'd be death saving all over the place. But the Manticore would not be able to recharge it at will or whatever, like roll a d6 or whatever it says in there, unless it does have a horn. If it has a horn that is poisonous, then it would have a horn attack, and I would probably include that into the multi-attack function. I would get rid of the wings, because nowhere except perhaps in heraldry do Manticores have wings, so get that out of there. And if you're talking about the Epic of Dreams, definitely has nimble, and it also gains different statuses and intrinsic abilities based on the power of the sin in which it indulges, which is gluttony. And again, we've talked about the nimble status and its ferociousness being a component of its hunger and indulgence. To sum up, prowling is a tiger when it's threatened, or if it needs as an opportunistic attack to send a poison javelin at a prey, it will do so to catch up. But because it is very fast, it will not do that very often. I would also say that if a Manticore comes up against something that has flight capabilities, it would also try to aim for it as an archer to take it down if it wants to eat it. But that would be the only reason a Manticore kills something, because it wants to eat it. All right, you guys, you know how this part goes. Like, share, subscribe. I know you got a group chat. You take this video, you shove it in that group chat. Do you understand me? Also, the Chinese alchemy video is on its way. I wanted to do this justice because China is really close to my heart in general, and there's so many cool things in here This thing is probably going to be like a 40-minute video or more, and it's gonna happen. I just don't know when. I mean, look at this. You don't even... Yep. Harrowings from the Rime is out in August. We've been working very busily as bees, one might say. And you can buy our core rulebook at exaltedfuneral.com. They are currently very low in stock, and we're about to get to the smaller edition of the book. So if you want this big one, this is probably your last chance. So get on it. Also, in order to find all this stuff, doobly-doo, Portal to Truth.